Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the season 1 finale of my adventures with Superman. It was called Hearts of the Fathers. And as it starts, in a dream, Clark witnesses Kryptonian forces led by himself attacking Earth and killing Lois and Jimmy on the Kent farm. After waking up, he visits the underground area on the Kent farm and tells a Jor-El hologram that he won't allow Krypton to invade Earth. He wants to find the general because he thinks the general can help him stop any future Kryptonian invasion, because the general would have more information than he does about what happened when the forces first showed up. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Lois are hiding the data sphere and its info from Clark. Perry makes all three of our heroes full-blown reporters as opposed to just interns, which they were at the beginning of the season. Clark takes Lois to his folks' place for Thanksgiving, and it turns out that Lois's dad was invited too, and that he, General Lane, is the general trying to kill Superman, which I did not see coming. Lois finds out that her dad, who of course she knew was a general, is anti-Superman, and the general learns that she's pro-Superman. Jimmy arrives and ends up accidentally showing Clark the files on the sphere, which opens and exposes a kryptonite crystal, weakening Clark until Jimmy puts it away, but not before the Jor-El hologram goes into alert mode and raises a giant ship which deploys killer robots that attack Jimmy and Lois until Jimmy accidentally exposes one to the kryptonite crystal, which disables it. Superman fights the robots aboard the ship with the help of the hologram before exposing the red sun-like core of the ship to the kryptonite by punching it into it. So he's holding it in his hand, even though it's hurting him, and he's punching into the core of the ship to get the crystal embedded in it. And this takes down the ship. After which, the hologram of Jor-El sends Superman back to the ground in a protective case. Lois then stands between her dad and Superman when her dad tries to kill the weakened Superman and convinces him to stand down. Afterwards, Jimmy, Lois, Clark, and Lois's folks sit down for Thanksgiving dinner, and Jimmy explains that he sold his social media app to the Daily Planet for $5 million and that he is now rich. Before the episode ends, a Kryptonian robot, it seemed like a robot anyway, informs its apparent robot master that Earth is in rebellion, to which the master responds by saying, "Let them rebel, but they will kneel." And I suspect that this robot has something to do with Zod, is either a Zod bot or working for Zod or something. So we'll have to see in season 2, which, by the way, we learn is going to happen via a title card just before the credits roll. So that's really cool. I was glad to hear that, because I really liked this episode, just as I liked the last 3 or 4 episodes quite a bit. I think the latter part of this season was the best part of the whole season. The first few episodes were okay. I enjoyed them, but it made the show seem more quirky and like a little fun Superman show versus a Superman show with any sort of consequential drama. And that changed in the last few episodes. The last few episodes really had some meat to them. They really raised the stakes from where they were in the beginning of the season, and it felt more like an actual Superman show. The depth of the relationship between Lois and Clark is significant now, where it wasn't in the beginning, and that's fine because it was kind of an origin story. But I don't know, I guess I'm spoiled on shows like Superman and Lois, and even Lois and Clark back from the 90s. And I guess I would have to even include the modern Superman films where, Lois knows he's Superman and they are together as opposed to not together, which, was the case in the Superman films when I was a kid. So I kind of got spoiled on that. And now it feels like the best kind of Superman story to me. And that's what these last few episodes were, where they're together and deeply in love. And, the story is really seated in that. And at some point in the comics, they got there as well, but I can't say that I ever read the comics. So I wasn't aware of that. I was more used to a Superman where they weren't together. The Superman show from the 50s and the Superman films of the 80s and the original from 78. So that I think is what explains why the beginning of this season didn't really do much for me, though I liked it. Whereas these last few episodes really, really did because of that core relationship and the strength of it, in the last few episodes. And, they raised the stakes just in general, no pun intended, by, finally putting all the cards on the table and explaining what this season was all about, which was really Cadmus trying to deal with Superman and prevent another Kryptonian invasion, which we didn't know in the beginning of the season had even happened. But now we do, and we know that the real threat is not these villains going around with Cadmus tech, but evil Kryptonians, apparently, which, again, I suppose I get, especially if it's Zod, as I suspect, because Zod, was always bent on domination and attacking Earth, at least in every iteration I've seen. So I suppose that makes sense. And that's just a whole lot better plot than this sort of janky plot we started off with in the beginning of the season. So, I'm glad that this season went where it went. I liked this episode in its own right. I think it was really cool to see Superman experience kryptonite for the first time and then like pick it up and use it against the enemy, even though he knew it was going to hurt him. That's just classic Superman. And, the animation is great and has been throughout, and this episode was no exception. Realizing that the general is Lois's dad, that it's that General Lane, was a crazy twist that sets up a conflict going forward that will be, I think, poignant. And action wise, I think it was well done. So I really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed this season. And I think it's great that it's going to get a second season. I'm looking forward to that. I'll definitely be back to, cover season 2 once it shows up. I'm going to get out of here for now. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.